welcome back to my channel. Today I have a January wrap-up for you, and that includes Salt to the Sea by Ruta Sepetys. This is a historical fiction, and I have this series' second book called Children of Virtue and Vengeance, and this is the first book, which is Children of Blood and Bone. This is a YA fantasy with a West African mythology, and I really like the first book, but the second one is not, so you're gonna get a very ranty review. So let's get ahead with it. But before that, for those of you who don't know what a wrap up is, it's basically mini book reviews of how many ever books I've read in a month. Alright then, let's go ahead. So the first book that I'd like to talk about is Salt in the Sea by Ruta Sepetys. So this is a historical fiction and one of the most memorable books that I've read this year. This is actually also a reread for me, which the first time I read a really long time ago, a few years ago, and I wanted to reread it because I remember that this was a very unforgettable book for me. So this book revolves around four characters who are based during the time of a very tragic incident of this ship called Wilhelm Gustloff, which was sailing away from Poland towards a better place with more peace, because during the World War II there was a lot of violence in Poland, where Russia and Germany were fighting for the land to try to cultivate it for their own good. And our four main characters are Joanna, who is a nurse who really misses her family and she wants to go back to them. And then we have Florian, who is who is a stranger, and he has a revenge plan against his former boss. Then we have Amelia, who is carrying a secret under a lot of layer of clothes, and she's running away from a very near past from her. And then we have Alfred, who is a delusional, self-acclaimed documentarian, and he really wants to please the Nazi in any which way he can. So we know this incident to actually surpass the number of deaths that we saw in Titanic and Poseidon, and this incident actually had far more deaths compared to those two, and they had at least a minimum of 9,000 people on the ship, and they were sailing away to safety. So the author spun a really great story with our four main characters who are fictional, and there was really great portrayal of fear and vulnerability and anger and horror that the writer really puts into our characters, makes them feel things, and it just felt so real, and it was a great experience for me to see something portrayed so well in a book. And although this book is actually written through a child's perspective, I'd like to still give you warnings, trigger warnings for rape, abuse, and a lot of violence. It's really gritty, so please do look out for that when you read this book. I also recommend you to read this book from cover to cover, because in the end, I'd like to show you that there is research and sources, so you actually get to know what is real in the story and what is not, and where the author took the inspiration from. So we also have really great side characters like Sorry Eva, the shoe poet, and the wandering boy, and we also have Ingrid. And one of the only downsides of the story was that I wish that Ingrid was one of our main characters. She is blind, and I had this immense respect and love for her, where she and Joanna just teamed up and saved each other always uh, during times when they would get caught up with a very troublesome group of soldiers and militants. And that was really great to see in the story because it really shows you how how less the how less the sympathy is for people who are physically disabled, and how Hitler showed hatred for people who he thought was weak because they had these kind of ailments. And you see amazing relationships being formed among all these people. There's also Sorry Eva, one of the side characters that I mentioned before. She has this really bad habit of saying something extremely gruesome followed by sorry. So I really liked all these really simple things. And then there was the shoe poet who would basically say very poetic things and really be obsessed with people's feet and how they should take care of them. And that's basically shoe poet. We half of the time we don't know the name of many of the characters like the wandering boy and the shoe poet. And I really liked that even though they weren't given a certain identity, they still had them nonetheless, and that was spectacular. So that's the end of this the book review for this book. I gave this book 5 stars. You can always go and check out my Goodreads, and I really enjoyed this. And let's move on to the next book. So the next book that I'd like to talk about is The Children of Virtue and Vengeance by Tomi Adeyemi. So this book is the second book in the Legend of Orisha series. The first one is Children of Blood and Bone, like I showed before. Um, so for those of you who have not read Children of Blood and Bone, uh, please stop watching the video right now because it can spoil children. I might be able to spoil Children of Blood and Bone for you because without that I can't discuss this book. So do go ahead and read that book first and come back to this video. It's not going anywhere. And let's get ahead with a little bit of a backstory and synopsis for those of you who had read Children of Blood and Bone. So, The Children of Blood and Bone was an absolute bomb in the conflict and entertainment department, but I can't say the same about the second book. There were a lot of things lacking, and there were a lot of things that I did not like about the book, which is where there were a lot of characters who actually kind of went off character with their personality, with the way that they were wise before, but not so much in this book. And the whole concept of uh, sacrificing to someone you love, I do not like that trope. I really think that that is a trope where you really use bloodshed as a dramatic excuse. In the first book, Zaylee, one of our main protagonists, is uh, basically her mother is killed during a raid which was done by the king Saran, who was actually murdered and no, whose family was tortured and even killed by the Magi. Magi is a clan of people who have powers that are blessed by some of the goddesses, and so he decides to completely banish magic from the world. And while Zeri's mother and various other from her clan possess magic, they are killed. So Zeri goes on an adventure in the first book with her brother and a runaway princess called Amari, and they go to get magic back. Zeli manages to do that, and now there is a war between Zeli and Inan, who is Amari's brother, who also wanted to remove magic from the world because he kind of followed in his dad's footsteps, where he believed and supported his dad in the in the argument of removing magic from the world. So Zayli is basically at war with Inan, and there's very love-hate relationship between both of them, and Amari is just trying to save her brother and not kill him, and the dad gets killed basically in the first book. And after that, now there is a war being and waged, and Amari and Zayli are in one team, but Amari is trying to tell Zayli that we can really have peace, and this is where it gets annoying, okay? Uh, Amari really wants peace, and she wants to have a throne up there. It's her throne, and she wants it at any cost. And she really wants to tell Zayli that if we can have peace with Inan and the kingdom, she really wants to save Orisha as a whole, but Zayli just wants revenge, hence virtue and vengeance. Except there is no virtue in this book. Barely any. I just hated how much they disrespected Amari, especially from the very beginning to almost the end. I understand why they continue to be like till the end, but in the beginning, Amari was this amazing, strong woman who just wanted to get peace between the kingdom and the Marjorie, and nobody was listening to her. In fact, they even kind of pushed her, they even just beat her around, and I hated that. I think that was a really toxic move to do, especially for people like the Margie who are fighting for freedom, and the least they could do is listen to a person who is actually trying to help them. And I hate when people are so closed off that when someone actually comes to offer them help, they don't take it, they're extremely judgmental, and I do not like that. And the whole time, they're just wasting their time fighting Amari and just wanting to shed as much blood as the king did. And then, so what's the difference between the kingdom and the Magi if they're both out to shed blood? Because then they have this whole sacrifice to someone you love theme going on, and it just doesn't make any better. And there's literally just one mature adult called Mama Akbar, who is literally the only mature elder in the story that I like, and I wish they heeded to her warnings of what to do and what not to do and what are you going to lose in this war. And everyone was just out to spill blood, and they just do not want to sit down and discuss a strategy. They were just all a really bunch of extremely unplanned, indecisive bunch of people. And Zen, okay? I don't know how it's pronounced. I don't know if the T is silent, but it's either Zen or Zen, but I'll call him Zen. But please, if I'm wrong, do not hesitate to correct me down in the comments below. Uh, for a real long time, Zen stood back and let Amari get treated really badly, and I think that was a really cowardly thing to do. I mean, if you love someone and they're just going through a bad time and they're really trying to bring about peace, you should really support them. They're your partner for a reason. How do you not support someone who's even actually doing the right thing? She gets beaten up, he barely does anything. He only once does he call off his sister for treating Amani the way she does. So there was just way too much. It was just this book was just all over the place. There was a lot of revenge and there was barely any virtue. Although I did like Zayli by the end of this book, I think that she really had a redeeming arc about her after so much self-pity throughout the entire book, and I really liked that change in her. However, I really liked Inan's perspective. I really think we got to know him a lot, as he had a great character development, and his perspective when he had this confrontation with his cousin. He really realized what this kingdom has done to a lot of people who gave everything for it. And that was one of the most spectacular things that actually happened in this book. Actually, one of my most favorite perspectives were Inan and Amari more than Zeli. I kind of lost interest in her life, guys. Maybe it's because I just didn't connect with her so well, but I think that she just had a lot of self pity, which made me uh, despise her a bit. Sorry. And this book really felt like a I hate love stories movie, where but here it's war and there it's I love you, no, I don't love you. Oh, okay, you love me, but I don't love you right now. Oh, but now I love you. So that whole thing was going on, but here was with uh it was with war. Do we wage war? Oh no, now I want peace. Oh, now I don't want peace because they have backed off. So now we can prepare for war. And all of this intercession was really really annoying. I had almost DNF'd this book at 80 pages. Yeah, guys, I have given this book 3 stars. I don't think it's a bad rating. So that was it. Oh, sorry, guys. Still don't know how to do this. So, that was it, and I hope you enjoyed this video because I did, and it felt good to run. And now I'm gonna go have another bookish snack.